allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, welcome everybody. First off, is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We actually do have two additions for you to consider. Both of them are field trips. One is in regards to the varsity cheerleading. It was the luck of the draw, the tourney for football, and then they are traveling to Indianapolis, so that's the reason for the expedite. And then the other is a proposal for an overnight trip to Spain in spring break 2024. The reason we want to consider adding it to the addition, if they can get their meeting, if approved, they get their meeting, they can save $300 per price if they can get this wrapped up before November.
Who's going to Spain?
It would be anybody who's been enrolled in Spanish at the high school.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of adding these two items to the agenda?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. So where are those going?
Under consent. Okay.
All right. Is that it?
For the additions, yeah.
Alrighty. I do not have anything for public comment for agenda items. Superintendent's report.
Yes, so we want to start out. There was an interest to start a conversation about electric school buses, and so we've invited our logistics director, Mr. Becker.
Wherever you want to go.
Thanks.
So just talk a little bit about pricing and factors and consideration and get the conversation started.
It's exciting.
I did a really crude slideshow for you, so let me look it up real quick. Which one is it, Jake?
MSLGI.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so the big push in the country at this point is to look for alternative fuel vehicles, whether that means propane, whether it means compact natural gas, or in a lot of cases electric. Electric being the most environmentally friendly because we're talking about zero emission vehicles. There's no exhaust from an electric bus or electric car. So the question is, first of all, do electric buses, school buses exist? And the answer is yeah. There are at least three manufacturers of them right now. I think there's a fourth one as well. But we do have options available to us if we decided to ever do anything like that. So what are the pros of an electric school bus? First of all, maintenance is going to be one of the pros that we could see. Maintenance costs, I would say. You're not going to have to change oil. You're not going to have the fuel filters that you wouldn't need because you wouldn't have any fuel. And then a big one for us is the after treatment, the DEF, the diesel particulate filter, those kinds of things, which are a headache for us, would no longer need to be necessary because those are only needed on a diesel engine. So we would definitely have a cost savings there. The only thing, well, we could talk a little bit more about the cons in a minute. I'm just not 100% sure what the maintenance cost would be for an electric bus at this point. Who knows what issues will come up in electric buses that we don't see in a diesel bus.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So on the maintenance, are they still running air brakes or are they going to a regenerative braking on
Well, you can get them with regenerative braking, but we would plan to have air brakes on ours.
Still have
at least
air
to
brakes
start
on,
off with,
okay.
yeah. So there would be some, oil needed to run
Right.
an air pump and stuff like that.
But
So-
I mean, there's a lot, I just didn't know if we were still doing air brakes, because there's a lot of maintenance goes into air brakes.
Yeah, and again, it would have to be something that we look into. I don't think we've made any decision one way or the other, but everything else we have has air brakes on it.
Right.
So, we'd probably start off that way. As far as fuel goes, we would have a 100% savings on that. I'll talk a little bit more about fuel savings in a little bit, but we use roughly, I did just some generic math, probably about $6,000 worth of fuel in a bus each year. We basically save all of it. Now, there obviously would be a cost to the electricity, however, we're generating our own electricity at this point, and we're doing it in abundance at the middle school, and since the transportation center is on the middle school's electric meter, we wouldn't have any electricity to worry about, at least at the very beginning anyway, because at some point, the amount of energy or electricity that we would have to generate, or at least put into our buses, would at some point outweigh the extra electricity that we generate now. So there would be a tipping point at some point down the road, we just don't know when that would be. And then, of course, there's also the benefit of quiet and comfortable rides. I drove one last summer, very quiet. As a matter of fact, the loudest part about it was the winter tires on the road. Other than that, you really couldn't hear anything. It was very much like driving a regular school bus. The bus I drove did have that regenerative braking, a brake assist kind of thing. So I let my foot off the gas and it just stopped. Basically, it didn't stop instantly, but it stopped on its own. So I hardly had to use the brakes at all. And of course, it's environmentally friendly. You can make your arguments about what environmental impact does it have to actually create the batteries themselves. But as far as what we use the buses for and our use of the buses, we would have a lot less lots less emissions from an electric bus than we would from a diesel bus. So then what are the cons of the whole thing? Well, it boils down to the same thing in pretty much in all of our categories, it's cost. I talked to our bus dealer the other day. As a matter of fact, we took our most recent bus specs, the last set of bus specs that we used to order diesel buses, and just put in an electric engine, and it turned out to be $443,673.
That's swapping out the current buses?
That's, yeah, exactly what we have now, except for an electric bus.
What is our regular, what is the cost per?
The current cost for our buses, at least once we factor in the inflation and whatnot, is about $129,000. And I'll bring up another slide with that stuff on it.
Okay.
New electric bus, yep. The we also would have to consider the cost for charging our buses. That could range from $15,000 to $25,000 per bus. It all depends on what infrastructure we have and what needs to be changed in our current infrastructure. Depends on how much the install costs. The chargers themselves run, there's one charger that's about $13,000, there's another one that's about $43,000. But the $43,000 charger actually can charge 2 buses at one time. So that's why it's only $25,000 in terms of per bus costs. And then, of course, at some point, we're going to see a reduction in our solar savings. So we will at some point, right now we're over-generating quite a bit here at the middle school, but at some point, if we have enough buses, we're going to hit that tipping point where we're going to use all that up, and we won't see that same kind of savings. Now, obviously, it's still better than having not had solar at all, but it will come down to it will turn out to be no longer a surplus. So the question is, how do we pay for it? If we're going to be expecting to go the electric route, how do we afford $440-something thousand? So, like I said, the cost of an electric bus is about $443,000. Diesel bus, that's those same specs. As a matter of fact, this would be the spec if we were to order buses tomorrow. Is $129,907. So that difference of $313,766 we have to make up somehow. There are several, basically there's one main way to do that, and that's with grant funding. So there is quite a few, there's a big school bus grant fund available through the Environmental Protection Agency right now. The first wave of it went through this fall. There's expected to be a second, and I think it's a 5-year program too. There's expected to be 5 rounds of this thing from one year to the next. The last iteration of this grant would have gotten us $250,000 per bus. Again, not quite covering the cost of that extra bit. And then $13,000 for infrastructure. And that's a flat 13,000. So if we decided to go with that $43,000 charger that they were telling me, we would have to up some money onto that. We can also look at other grants in conjunction with the EPA grant. So there's the VW mitigation trust that the state of Indiana has. I don't know how much more funding they have. That started back in 2017. They may have run out of funding for that by now, but that's one of the options that I've heard people have been using. The other one is the DieselWise initiative. That's generally used for infrastructure when it comes to grant payments and stuff, people installing chargers and things like that. And there's other grants out there. The salesman for Curlin Bus Sales told me yesterday that there was actually a utility in southern Indiana somewhere that had a settlement for some sort of environmental impact, and that settlement had to go toward clean air, clean energy kind of stuff. And they didn't have enough people or enough need in their customer base to take care of that whole settlement, so they expanded it to the entire state of Indiana. And he thought we might be able to make use of that. So that's another possibility. And I'm sure that there's other ones out there. It's just a matter of looking for them and finding. The question, whenever you talk about grants and funding programs through grants, is how long are they going to be there? And are we going to be able to make this a long-term impact? And the answer right now is I have no idea. But this is what's available to us at this time. When it all comes down to it, I think it's definitely worth something to look into. My main thing is I don't want it to be an anchor around our neck financially. So I want to get to a point where we can afford these buses at roughly the same cost that we're paying for a diesel bus right now. And even though this is only $250,000, the EPA grant is only $250,000 per bus, it wouldn't quite cover the difference between that cost of an electric bus and a diesel bus. It's at least getting us really close. So it's now something to kind of consider. And if you combine it with some of your other grants, we might actually be able to make it something similar to what that diesel bus costs.
So you said the average fuel price, for fuel used was $6,000 per bus?
$6,000 roughly per bus, yeah, like I said, on average, so that's obviously.
What is a typical lifetime of a bus?
Well, the number I've been using is 10 years, because that's the warranty on a battery electric bus right now, or at least the battery of electric bus. So I've been going off of that. So if you're looking at a 10-year $60,000 savings, or 10-year $6,000 savings, you're looking at $60,000, which on top of your $250,000 puts you really close to that difference. So.
What if electric buses have a longer life than?
We'll have to wait and see on that one. Right now, I don't know that there's anybody who's gotten more than 2 or 3 years out of them. So.
And you save a lot of money on the oil and filters and stuff too. wouldn't you?
Potentially, yeah.
Man hours, yeah.
None of that,
That's what we're looking at.
What's the current lifetime of, what do we keep our diesel buses in rotation? How
Our
long?
diesel buses are rotated out roughly 10, 11 years.
What,
You actually have.
you know, what our average bus route is running miles on, not per day, or either per day or each trip?
I would say roughly we're looking at probably about 75 to 80 miles a day on average.
Total?
For our routes.
For both routes?
Yeah, for the whole day, yeah.
Okay. And the buses are running, what, about 130, 140 miles?
Yeah, about 120 a day. Our biggest route is about 120 miles a day.
No, I meant electric buses, that's what they could do on the
Oh,
charge.
their range is 140 miles per
140
charge,
miles
is
per
what they're
charge.
saying.
And-
But that's, again, if you're talking about a 120 miles per day, that's 60 miles per route. So you can come back midday,
The
plug it
charge
in,
and you're
and charge
fine.
it up.
Yeah.
The only thing that we would have to be careful about is what are you gonna do about your longer trips, maybe to St. Louis or
You just don't take
Cleveland
one
or
of
something
those
like
buses.
that. You probably have to keep a couple diesel buses around.
For sure, yeah. Well, it would take many years. And by that point, I mean, with the batteries that they're coming out with, the technology,
Right.
you know, now you're starting to see some of these cars that are coming out, 600 plus miles on a charge, so
Right.
it's coming around. It's not like we're changing all our buses out next
Right,
year.
right.
How about, maintenance wise, we need two separate maintenance people for our buses, like ones that are certified to do electric, ones that are certified for
I would-
diesel?
I would, especially when we first start off the program, I would make sure that both of our mechanics are trained one way or the other on the electric bus. So I wouldn't want it to be where one guy does diesel and one guy does electric, because at the very beginning, there wouldn't be enough for anybody to do with the electric side.
Okay.
But yeah, And Curlin Bus Sale, all the dealers have workshops and whatnot to train technicians on how to do that kind of stuff. The warranty on the batteries right now is 10 years. The guy did say that they were boasting 15 to 20-year lifespan on it. My question is, what is the tipping point for warrantying a battery? So for instance, if I'm expecting to get 140 miles per charge out of my bus, and it drops to 100 miles or 50 miles or something, when is the manufacturer gonna say, okay, you can now submit that battery for warranty replacement? So, I mean, if it's something like even a small drop, then hey, yeah, that's gonna be great. But if they're gonna say, no, not till you get down to 25 miles or something like that, well, that's not gonna do us a whole lot of good, because that bus will be just sitting in the lot until then.
Right. It's exciting.
It is.
The reach though.
Expensive.
Yeah, sounds feasible.
It's definitely something I think it's definitely something worth continued investigation, especially on the funding end. Definitely want to wait and see what the next round of the EPA grant is going to look like. I can tell you that this last round, they prioritized certain groups above other groups, and as far as the priority list goes, we would have been at the very bottom of the list. So now, with that said, the government did say this past, well, maybe just a couple weeks ago, that they intended to double the amount of money available in this grant for the next round, which I don't necessarily think will give people a chance to buy more buses. I think they're just gonna make it available to more people, so the people at the bottom of the list might actually get a shot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Not
very
a problem.
much. Appreciate it.
John. We will, our bargaining team will be meeting with the union on Monday night to bargain benefits. And so we're looking forward to that opportunity. Was very proud of our staff, our students, our community when we had the water shut off last week, and everybody worked really well together to basically dismiss all of our students within 2 hours and send them home. It was inconvenient to parents. We get it, but I didn't receive one complaint. And I was really appreciative that people seem to understand the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then preschool, we had a meeting. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything that you want to
Yeah, we had,
just
so you
update.
know that we began our phase, so the last board meeting, we went through the approval, and we wasted no time. 4 days after that, we had our first kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting shared some like preliminary questions that they were saying would give them an idea of how to begin their work and research. We then took that back to the early learning committee. We asked those questions to the best of our ability with just some like kind of gut thoughts. Passed that back, and that's beginning their work. In the upcoming Tri Creek Schools newsletter, which will come out in October, you'll see a blurb in there that speaks to our interest in exploring the potential of preschool at Tri Creek. And in it, we are encouraging all of our families to take the survey. So there's a survey link that's embedded into that, asks a series of questions. The intention of that survey, and you open it up, I recommend you fill it out, is to really see what is the need. What kind of families are looking for this? What are they currently using? What is the age of children? What's the next program? It's a very comprehensive survey that the folks at Transform Consulting Group put together. It's got a point of contact there through their firm. And if folks have questions, they can reach out. But as soon as that closes down, we'll be able to look at the results, and that'll start to guide some work to preparing agendas for listening posts and community-wide events to learn more, to discuss more, and guide all of that phase one work. So ultimately, by the time we get to January, they'll be ready to make a recommendation based on data and feedback and what we're trying to solve.
Thanks, Kevin. We are in the midst of launching a staff recognition link. So the link is actually live. Jay helped me put that on there yesterday, and we'll publish that with our staff, and then it will be in our newsletter about how any community member, student, fellow staff member can submit their testimony of good work that we're doing. I know when we were at the conference, Diana pointed out an above and beyond program that another school was doing, so kind of took a peek of that, and we can incorporate that into this recognition program. So
That's awesome.
yeah, thanks. Yeah. And a couple of meetings ago, there was a couple that came and talked about one of our alumni who had been successful in a teaching career. And we've been going back and forth about what would be a proper way to recognize this person. So Deanne's working on that, and hopefully next meeting we'll have something to present to you and send to his family. And next week, no, the October 25th, we plan a school town hall meeting about planning for the future in Tri Creek. That meeting will be on the topic of the demographic study. There have been a lot of community questions regarding all the construction and the impact on the schooling, and to talk about our financial status and perhaps challenges. So that'll be on October 25th.
What time is that meeting?
7 p.m.
And where is it being held?
in this room. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Board member report. Anybody? Alrighty.
Oh, I guess we could say that we just got back from conference.
Oh, yep,
Learned a lot of great stuff, had a lot of great speakers, and
yeah,
it was it's always a really good
good
event.
stuff. Talked to some folks about some electric buses.
Yeah.
Of course, they were selling them, so you can't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were really talking them up.
They were, yes.
Alrighty. Ready for a public hearing? I gotta open it up, right? So, alright, opening up for a conduct a public hearing for the 2023 budget, the 2023 to 2027 bus replacement plan, and the 2023 to 2025 capital projects plan.
Budget
Can we just go
season.
with this thing?
Okay, so the 2023 budget here, we've been planning this one for a while. Just wanna make sure that doesn't go sliding off here. Okay. So October 1st, I advertised our budgets as written on Gateway. Tonight, we're here for our public hearing, and on the 27th, we'll do adoption, hopefully. And then by January 1st, we'll have the DLGF issue our budget order. Even though this is all tight here in October, we have started this process way back in, I'd say in January, working on capital projects and debt schedules and everything back then. So it's been a long process to get up to this point, to bring budgets to the board at this point. So we will take a look at our appropriations, which is our actual budget. The board members all received budget books that had line items and lots of information in them, a nice brick here of information that would have every single line item that's included in the 23 budget, all the 23 maximum levies that we have, our bus replacement plan, our capital projects plan, and our assets listed of anything over $10,000 we have to report. And then what we would transfer from our basic grant revenue to our education. So this is all of everything that we're going to ask the board to approve, our transfer from education to operations being one of those resolutions. All of this information was posted on our website by code, so it's been out there since we posted in the Gateway system, which is our transparency portal for everything in the budget process. So it's on our website as well. So right here, I've got uses of funds here. So we have two different major funds here. We have our education fund and our operations fund. Our education fund is specific to anything that touches the classroom. It's everything that goes closest to the classroom here. So we're talking about our teachers, principals, salary and benefits. We're talking about special programs such as our career and technical education, our gifted and talented programs, special ed, summer school remediation, all of that, guidance, nurses, classroom supplies, equipments, all that kind of stuff that's actually right as close as we can get to the classroom. We also have an operations fund here. That's more overhead, and that is operational in nature, so it's our transportation budget, our bus replacement, capital project funds that we would use to improve our buildings and infrastructure here. We pay for our utilities out of there, insurance costs, all that fun stuff. As far as personnel in there, of course, you have your transportation department, you've got your custodial maintenance and grounds, and the superintendent's office, business office, human resources. We're not as close to the classroom, we impact the classroom, but we are operations in nature. As far as revenue, if you look over on the right-hand side here, for education fund, the money that we get for state tuition support, which is the per student funding that we get for all of our enrollment, by code has to go into education fund first. But then a portion of it can be transferred over to operations fund to help support all those other costs. Because that is the bulk of our revenue here in the district besides property tax. And property tax, as you can see, only ends up in operations fund because that supports our operations here. So again, our state tuition support goes into education, and part of the budget process is we're going to approve a resolution to transfer a portion of that over to the operations fund. We also have local revenue that's in our education fund, and that includes money that we would receive for summer school. It also includes interest on our bank account that we get, refunds that we get when we have rebates or such, so that's the local revenue there. But it's interesting to note that you can transfer from one fund to the other through the resolution, and that there is a guideline out there by the Department of Ed and the state of Indiana that you shouldn't transfer more than 15% of that state tuition support from education into operations. Many school districts in our region up here in Lake County have a difficult time meeting that 15% requirement and have to apply for a waiver. That's because their operations fund is supported by property tax, and they don't get a lot of property tax owners or property people paying their bills, so they have to transfer more money than what's allowable in the 15%. We're fortunate that we have a very high rate of tax collection here in our district. So we are actually, and we have a very high assessed value. So our land values here are assessed at much higher rate than some of our friends up north here in our communities up north. So we do receive a good amount of tax money, and we are able to meet that 15%. Less than 15%, we're actually at about a 7% transfer. So that's we're half of what we are maxed out that the DOE requires. So as far as education fund budget assumptions, so the revenue was built on actual ADM, which is our enrollment. ADM is short for enrollment, pretty much. Lingo for that. So 3,269 students here. There are two counts that affect the monies that come in at the district here. We have a September account, which we just had September 16th, and then we'll have a February count too. So if you have a massive amount of students that might graduate early or leave the district, you could see a really big reduction in your state tuition support coming in because it's tied to the student, yet you still have to pay your teachers through the end of the school year. So it's really, really difficult having two counts in an unstable environment like that, but we're fortunate that we typically only have about 10 to 20 student loss due to early graduations and other factors. So it's built on an assumption of 3,269 for an ADM and a loss of 10 students there. I also put in there because this is a calendar year budget for 2023, but we in schools here speak in fiscal year, which would be a school year. So you start a little bit in 2022 here, and then you go to 2023, but this is built on future revenues of no increase in ADM. And you'll see in a slide what our trend has been, so this is very conservative, let's say that. It also has our career and technical ed revenue at about $1 million, and increasing that for the following year. A slight increase for special ed funding, flat and honors, and then our basic grant is an increase of 4.1% year over year from last year to this year. We're very fortunate that the legislators passed that for the budget for schools, and we're at 2%. I built in there for 23-24 in the budget here, just for next year, because we don't know what funding's going to be. We have to go through legislative session. That's very conservative. Expenditures, it's anticipating the 2% health insurance increase, which was finalized on Monday with our insurance trust. They agreed to accept that 2% increase in health insurance. I have yet to determine how that's going to shake out in premiums for our employees. We have to go through negotiations, which starts on Monday. It includes $127,000 in increase in cooperative costs for our special ed services too. We have increased student enrollment in the program. We do have increased funding that offsets that dollar amount there. It also includes increases in the starting rates for secretary, bumping those starting rates up in aides, custodial, and substitute teachers. A lot of those are falling behind from what the market is doing out there, so we're bumping up those up to what we can. And again, it's got the transfer to operations fund of that 7%, where we can actually do up to 15, but we don't need 15%. So this is a slide that shows you our district enrollment trend here for the last, I think it's 14 years here. You can see in the last 2 years, we've had a positive trend here. 77 students in 21-22, I should say, and in 25 students in 22-23 this year, as far as our enrollment. Overall, from 2009 to 2023 there, we have a loss, it shows, of 330 students, because we started at 3599 and we're down to 3269. If we had enrollment today of that 3599, we would have over $2 million more in budget here. That's just to think about that. So that was a loss every year that we've had, but if we had 3599 students in district right now, we'd have $2 million more in funding. But I'm very excited about the trend that we're seeing in positive student enrollment here. Last year we looked at this because this was a very strong point, and that's where that yellow line is here. This is kindergarten versus our senior class. So kindergarten, like if you can see where the yellow line is, that 290, that was our kindergarten class last year, and the red 248 is our senior class. So we looked at that because that's what the trend has been, and that's why our enrollment has been on the downward trend. It's because our kindergarten class has been less, as you can see, very low in the 209, 204, 218, versus our senior classes that were graduating in the 300s there for that trend at that point. We had a bumper crop last year of kindergartners. They're working their way through first grade right now. But we had a strong enrollment this year of 244 versus our senior class going out at 268. So you've got a 24 student difference there, yet we gained 25 students. So that's a very positive thing to see, that it's not just in kindergarten that we're gaining students. This is our career and technical ed training. These are our vocational classes, our welding, our auto, our business classes, everything here. This is just showing the funding trend there. I did this from when I started in 13-14 here. We were getting $400,000 in CTE funding, and we're anticipating somewhere around $1.1 million in 22-23. A lot of that has been focusing on our high wage, high need job industries like welding, auto, and machining out there, and now construction trades, those types of programs that are in high demand, and we get high rates of money and rebates from the state for that. So that's been a great trend towards there, plus positive enrollment in that area. The high school needs to be commended for focusing on that and giving these opportunities to students. Special ed funding has been on a trend for up to, the legislators added some more money to the bottom line of special ed funding, plus we have an increased enrollment, like I said, so it's been going up throughout the years as well. Honors grant funding, That's another component of our, what we receive as far as revenue, and that's been pretty stable, let's say. But I wanted to take a look at total basic grant funding, and you can see on this chart here, this goes back a good amount of years here, but what I wanted to point out, in the last 2 years here, we've had a 102 student increase in the last 2 years in that jump. It looks like we've received quite a bit of money here as far as on this slide here, over $2-3 million extra in money, but on the same hand, we've got 102 more students. So students just don't show up in one grade, they show up all over the place. We start busting at the seams in classes, we have to add another teacher in multiple different grade levels. It tends to eat up, it sounds like a lot of money, that $2.8 million in funding that we received over the last 3 years. But on the same hand, you think about your inflation that's been going on, we're paying a lot more for stuff, we're falling behind on wages, and on top of it, we've got 102 more students in different areas, and we start tipping that point of, is 30 kids in a classroom where we want to be? No, we don't, so we have to add another teacher. And so there's a lot of support services in there as well. So it's a good trend, it's a good chart, but it's a challenging one because it really tells the story of, well, you're getting so much more, but on the same hand, 102 students in 2 years. Again, that other chart that I showed you on district enrollment trend, it took us 14 years to lose 330 students, but it's taken us 2 years to gain 102. That's a quick pivot. Let's just say that. This is the funding per student that resulted in that. I know Doug likes this chart and likes to see this. He always asks me, like, what's our per student funding? So you can see a trend. In 18-19, we were getting about $5,700 per student, and now it's up to $6,588. This is basic. This is just what the basic grant is. This isn't the extra CTE money that goes on top of there, the special ed and everything else. That would bump it up another $300-ish per student. Cash flow here. This is the education cash flow by fund, and I've done 2019-20 to up to the estimated end of the year 2022-23. You see a beginning balance, you see how many receipts we got, what we were transferring. Again, there's a transfer back in 19-20. We started transferring about 10.9%, and we backed off each year, so you can see how much we backed off. From 10.9 down to 10.1, 7.9, and 6.2 right now is roughly what the school year will look like. It's 7% within the calendar year. Down below, you'll see the surplus and deficit of each year and what our ending cash balance is. You're seeing a trend of declining. The next slide will show where we spent this money and what happened in those 2 years there. I think you can tell what happened between 2019 and 2021 that caused everyone else to have to pivot and spend a lot more. So I threw 18-19 in here because this slide here pulls together some enrollment trends on the top. It shows our enrollment, that first line, and where we were with positive or negative students. This one I didn't update, I'm sorry, with the actual count date. It says 3276, but it's 3269 on there. So it said 32 students, it's only 25. But it's got the basic grant numbers on here, and how much extra money we got for each year. Teacher count, that's something to look at. So back in the 18-19 school year, we had 164 teachers. We're at 182 teachers this year, so we've added, you can see throughout the years, teachers here. And that right below that is the additional cost of each one of those additions. That last one where it says $30,000 is an additional cost, that's not the cost of one single teacher here. We had retirements. This is the net effect of folks with higher salaries with retirements, and then the other salaries that came on. So the net effect of last year of adding one teacher was around $30,000 additional cost to the budget. Right below that, you'll see the raises that we've approved throughout the years here too. We started with 2.6%, 3.3, 2.1, 5.22 last year, and 2.55 for the teachers' salary package. Right below that, you'll see the other staff, which would include support staff and administrators there. And we try to mirror what the teachers are getting to a certain degree of what we can afford. Benefit cost is another cost that's either gone up or down, depending, and it's now stabilizing, which is really good. I'm really happy with the 2% increase. I hear school districts, the norm is in the 8 to 14% increase this year. They're starting to feel the effects of what they call the COVID effect, where people didn't go to the doctors and now they're going and those bills are rolling in and hitting their plans for untreated illnesses for a certain period of time. We joined an insurance, or we formed an insurance trust with 3 other school districts in 2020, and we're seeing a positive effect. We're not bumping up as much as we used to in insurance costs. It used to be, the norm was 6 to 8% easily. So these are all factors of what the education cash flow has seen. Specifically, that 1920 to 2021 pandemic expenditures were the majority of the deficit there. We had to add staff, we had to pivot, get a lot of supplies and PPE in here. Thank goodness we don't have to think about that anymore. So our education budget is built at 24 million flat. This is a breakdown of it here. You'll see that 95.1% of the education fund is spent on salaries and benefits. And I consider NYSEC part of that because they are people in our building. So even though we pay them as a contract service, they are teachers in our building here providing special ed services. So you can see how that breaks down. Taking a further look here at the personnel cost breakdown of the education fund, which is $22,800,000 of that $24 million. You can see that teachers are 76.7% of that. You have administration at 7.8, support at 9.8, and then the CTE and NYSEC salaries 5.6. Again, that 95.1% of the education budget is all salary and benefits. Very fixed costs there. We can't, you really can't cut staff to a certain extent. One of the things that the DOE is looking at is whether or not you are spending 45% of your state tuition support on full-time teacher salaries. They're very specific about what a full-time teacher is. It is someone who spends 50% or more of their time instructing students on a daily basis. It does not include other members of the bargaining unit, which would be your counselors, your media specialists, and other folks there that are part of that bargaining unit, which used to be defined as part of the teachers unit. So they look at full-time teacher salaries. When they first came out with this 45%, we had no idea where they pulled that 45%, like why, and what does that mean? Because some school districts like ours, we value our benefits package and we put a lot of money into our benefits package. We're much richer in our benefits than other school districts. I could go so far to say that we have the best benefits package in Lake County here for our teachers. So that number doesn't play into this. It's because our union values their future. They value planning for their future in annuities and VEBA accounts for health spending when they retire. They really value that, and they want to keep that high funded. But that doesn't go into this. It's still a teacher cost, but they don't allow us to take that into consideration. Another school district can take all of those benefit costs and roll it into salaries and pay a lot more for salaries because their union wants money in the pocket rather than money in the future. We prefer money in the future here. So that's not in this consideration. So what you do, we take our total full-time teacher salaries plus our NYSEC teacher salaries to get the total amount. You divide it by our state's tuition support. We made it by the skin of our teeth here at 45.45. So we are right there. If they let us put benefits in there, we'll blow this out of the park. We definitely will, because we've got a lot of money in our benefits here. But I just wanted to let the board know that we made it. We made it.
Pass.
We're not gonna be on the list. So operations budgets, similar, let's go over revenues here. We have local property tax that goes into here. I do wanna touch, and there's a slide on this, circuit breaker loss. Circuit breaker loss for 2022 in our district was $450,000. What that means is that we built a budget assuming we would get every dollar that we were sending out there in the levy and that the tax rate was built on that. But some of our homes reached the max by Indiana code that you can be taxed. And anything above that 1, 2, or 3% of your property value is a loss to all the entities within that district. So as a school district, we lost $450,000 in tax revenue that we wrote the budget on. That is in operations fund, but again, remember the slide where the arrows went both ways? You slide money from one to the other. It affects salaries, and it affects education, and it affects kids when you lose money like this. Again, the estimates from the Department of Local Government Finance is that $590,000 in 2023 will be missed as well. So the budget was built on that. And again, the education fund transfers are in here. As far as expenditures, the one thing I wanted to note is that our region, we were second in the county as far as school districts to have the largest jump in assessed valuation. That means our home values jumped more than all the other school districts, the 16 school districts in the county here. Griffith beat us and they were 29%, we're 21.52. Hanover was 19 and change behind us. So our home values have jumped up quite a bit, and that helps us with our budget as well. It includes the 2% increase of health insurance. It also includes 4 new buses that John's asking for here on our bus replacement plan. It includes the building maintenance and repairs and everything that we do, and then of course all the other expenditures that are allowable. The budget that's presented for you there is $9,405,820. This is the breakdown. We've got 27% going to capital projects, 28.3% going to transportation. We have $640,000 in the budget for 4 buses for John there on bus replacement. And other operations, just general, other things here from technology to repairs here, 38%. We built the budget on a bumped up number for those buses because the trend is going high. Last year we budgeted $135,000 a bus with all the extras that we put on them and everything. This year we went with $160,000. Things cost more, and it's looking that way. Capital projects breakdown, this is just a breakdown of where it all goes. We've got insurance, a big chunk of it, technology and maintenance of equipment, almost neck and neck there. And then we've got like an emergency contingency, some other equipment and building improvements here. This is just to keep our buildings up and running and repairing what gets broken. Transportation breakdown, you could see that the majority of the transportation budget is salary and benefits, 70% of that. In that budget there of the $2,664,000. I put some department notes here that John's thrown out there to us. We have 48 buses. 2 of them are type A 14 passenger buses. 4 of our buses have wheelchair lifts. That's, I think, pretty much unheard of for a school district in our size, but we tend to get called from other districts when their buses go down with wheelchair lifts to actually use our wheelchair lifts. Our district is 179 square miles. It's the southern third of Lake County. When you see it on the map, it's incredible to see that southern third of Lake County is all of our district. So we travel a lot of miles. Last year, John recorded 503,000 miles that our buses traveled, over 2,800 miles a day for our transportation department. When you look at our fuel, we used 62,000 gallons of gas last year. At a cost of, in June, if we took that 62,000 at the cost that we had in June at the end of the budget, it was $366,000 in gas alone. 8 miles per gallon is what that average there. How about that? So capital projects plan lists all proposed expenditures that exceed $10,000. It's on our website. It's got some technology in there. It's got $20,000 in technology, and it's got some custodial and maintenance equipment on there, writing floor scrubber and some other buffers and stuff that would equal over that. Not a lot of stuff over $10,000. Most things are under that limit there. And again, our bus replacement plan, they advise a 12-year replacement cycle. Unfortunately, we found that it's better to replace them in the 10 to 11 years because we get a better return on our trade-ins. And those last couple of years, you are struggling to get those things inspected and keep them on the road and running because of the salt and just the wear and tear that we get on our engines and bodies there. So we have a total fleet of 48 buses, and again, 478 passengers in here. This is that circuit breaker slide that I talked about, the loss. You can see the jump in the last 3 years that we've had as a district in the 400,000+ range that we've lost in circuit breaker, just in tax money coming in. And again, that estimated loss is in 2023, $590,000. The increases that I'm asking for tonight on the agenda for you guys for support staff and administrators is roughly a 2.5% increase, but some other positions are getting a larger starting increase that would be bigger than the 2.5%. What I'm asking for tonight is roughly $213,000 in additional costs. If you can imagine what that $590,000 would have done for our budgets if we had it to provide for our staff here. It's definitely something we feel, and we're not able to provide the increases that I'd like to had we had money like this. So the debt service fund is another one that we're budgeting for. Our debt service fund is funded with local property tax. What it has in there as far as expenditures would be all of our, I consider them mortgages for all our projects, our bonds. So we've got our 2008, 2014 through 19, 21, and 22 bonds. They had classroom additions in there, everything from the high school renovation back in the early 2000s to our current Red Devil Trades building. So those are all our mortgages that we have to make our payments on. It also includes common school funds, which funds our technology and some construction here in the district, and textbook rental for anything that's not funded from the state in our waiver process for free and reduced lunch. We also have our retirement debt service fund, which is for our pension bonds from 2006. Those will be paid off, or that mortgage will be paid off in 2028. That is a budget of about $93,000 a year, $94,000, and that's funded by local property tax. So this is our Form 3 that was sent out, and it's on our website with the estimated budgets that I just went over, our maximum tax levy, and the current. When you advertise a slightly inflated budget so that you can, because you can never get more than what you advertise, so that you put a little cushion out there for it. And then comparison of tax rates. I've got 2022 advertised and approved, so we advertised a $1.11, and we came in at 98 cents. I'm advertising $1.21, and it's to give us a buffer here. I'm estimating it'll be more like $1.05 to $1.12. That's what I'm seeing. I think it's more going to be like $1.05. Comparison of tax rates here. So this is all the schools in Lake County. The arrow there is us at our current 98 cents, and they're all ranked. So the range is from $2.90 down to 67 cents as far as in our county. And we're very close to a best value there as far as on the bottom. The one thing on this slide is interesting to see. Anything that you see in light blue and red, those are school districts that have had referendums. And referendums are additional funding that they've asked their taxpayers for specific uses. It might be to fund salaries, it might be for a project. Those are the different ones. The red one is for the projects, the blues are for the salaries assistance. So out of 16 school districts, and this again is last year's 2022 tax rate, so Griffith Schools is on there just 2 slides or 2 rows over to the left from us. Griffith Schools passed a referendum, so their blue hasn't shown up yet, but they're gonna have blue on here. So out of the 16 schools in here, we have 5 school districts now that don't have referendums. We don't have a referendum. And I would be willing to say that I have heard at least 2 of the school districts, possibly 3 of those 5 will be running a referendum in May of 2023. So everyone's finding it hard to do what they need to within their own means, and they're running referendums to help bring the extra needs to the school district and the ability to do that. So as far as the budget adoption process, again, tonight we're at our public hearing here where the public can speak or ask questions. And then on the 27th, I will ask you to adopt the rates as presented. Hopefully the DLGF will get their business done by December 31st so we can get everything loaded by January 23. They've been on a good trend for that. We're 3 years in running here by getting it done by December 31st. So that's always helpful when we can do that. So are there any questions or anything that I can take from the board? Okay, at this time I think you would ask if there were any questions, I guess, from the public that I might be able to answer.
Any public comment for Dina?
I have put you all to silence. That's awesome. Hopefully you're still awake, right? No? Thank you guys. For letting
Thank
me
you,
do
yeah,
that. Thank you.
appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, now I'm gonna declare this hearing closed. Moving on. Approve the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, September 22nd, 22.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Payroll and claims. Approve the payroll and claims.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Personnel. We want to approve the personnel report dated Thursday, October 13th, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Number 2, approve the support staff and administrative salary rate increases retroactive to July 1st, 2022.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do you want me to go over that?
Yes, please.
Like real quick, guys?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. So this is a total salary, approximate salary increase for all funds, $213,670. Again, that's including education, operation, and some positions that are funded by grant funds as well, including school lunch. But this is for all support staff and administration positions. So education fund, the increases total $118,795. This is an increase to our substitute teacher rate, which hasn't been touched since 2016 maybe, 2017 around there. It's bringing a permit only up to $85 a day from $70 a day, licensed teachers to $90 a day from $75 a day, and a retired Tri-Creek school teacher to $100 a day from $85 a day. Again, it's a 7.5-hour day, and that's an additional cost of about $30,000. It's bringing our classroom aid starting rate from $12 to $12.50 an hour. Our secretary rate from $12.58 an hour to $14. And if I could back up on the classroom aides, 2 years ago we were at $9.68 an hour. We brought it up to $12, and now we're bringing it up to $12.50. And I will say other school districts are starting easily at $15. I wish I could do more. Secretary starting rate again, $14 an hour. We're going to add one varsity fire football coach, and add one freshman football coach for safety needs on the field. And all other support staff will have an increase of 2.5%. for their positions. When we talk about operations fund, it's $76,325. This is custodians going from $14 to $14.50 as a starting. Same thing with grounds crew. It's bringing that extracurricular trip rate from $12.60 to $15.50. It is bringing our bus driver trainer rate to their driver rate. Currently, right now, how much do they get for training?
Our lead trainer is $18.39 an hour, and our assistant trainer is $13.77.
$13.77 to train a driver that's gonna be making $20.97, or $22.50, I'm sorry. So this is bringing them to their hourly rate that they would get on the road to do a very important job and to stay here and not go somewhere else and train other people, because we need them, we need our bus drivers. And then finally, 2.5% increase to all other staff like the other. That's the total compensation package.
Thank you. Alrighty, I have my motion in a second. We discussed it. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Number 3, approve a 77% FTE part-time contract for the remainder of the 22-23 school year for Kristen Camry, Lowell High School mathematics teacher, effective November 1st, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This is bringing back a teacher who has agreed to help us out. She's been out on maternity leave. She exercised her right to stay home. But we desperately need a quality teacher to help out the high school because it's very difficult to find a math teacher. And she is doing a great favor by coming back early, then taking off the full year and finding childcare to help support our program. So this is a wonderful addition to us to help us out. A great solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Alrighty, board policy. Number 1, approve the board policy 3615, adjunct teachers.
Yeah, so to just kind of recap the concept of adjunct teacher and the reason for considering this policy. As we know that there is a teacher shortage, hiring season puts schools in positions of not having any qualified certified candidates at all to teach some classes. This adjunct teacher clause, so to speak, is afforded by the state of Indiana, and it allows school corporations to hire and issue permits for full or part-time adjunct teachers who have at least 4 years of experience in a school subject. So they're not licensed teachers, they just have a knowledge and some experience in the content area. As in this draft policy, the board will announce any vacant adjunct teacher positions at regular meetings of the board, so it would be on a case-by-case basis. The board will only hire an adjunct teacher for hard-to-fill positions for which no licensed candidates applied and for a position that is essential to the school curriculum. The board will issue an adjunct teacher permit. So in essence, instead of the state issuing a teacher's license, the state's granting the permission to the board to afford them the opportunity to teach. This, if you decided to hire someone under this, they would sign an employment agreement. That agreement would basically be good for up to 1 school year, but would have to be renewed annually, again, if no applicants in the same circumstances the following school year. The pay for the adjunct teacher will be recommended by the superintendent based upon experience and other non-discriminatory factors and approved by the board. So adjunct teachers are not a part of the teacher bargaining unit. They also do not qualify for teacher retirement. Adjunct teacher would be required to go through the same application process, background check process, would be evaluated through the same processes that we have for normal teachers, and we would develop administrative procedures. This has gone through 2 discussion meetings with the union. At the latest, the union supports it, but only as a last resort, as indicated in this policy. By approving this policy, if we had to use it, it would be nice to just have it there in case we had to use it. So if you can imagine at any point in the school year, but more specifically in August, if you've got positions and you've scheduled your entire master schedule around those classes and you have no one to fill it, you're collapsing programs or you're collapsing classes, and that's really going to put you in a bind. This could be your next best option.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Alrighty. So we will review the draft of the 23-24 academic school year calendar.
Yeah, so this draft version was taken to a discussion meeting with the teachers union. Just starting in August, the Lake County Fair is that would end at the end of around the 11th of August. We have our staff coming back on Monday the 14th, first student day on August 17th. That gets us to December. As you can see, you got Labor Day. We're proposing the e-learning day for professional development as we did this past school year. In October, you can see we've got parent conferences and a staff development day. At the end of October, you have fall break, 2 days. In November, 3 days for the Thanksgiving holiday of no school. And in December, first semester would end at the end of the school day on Friday, December 22nd. In January, second semester would start January 8th. Flex day on Martin Luther King Jr. We would have an e-learning day for professional development. In February, a flex day if we needed for a snow makeup, weather makeup, emergency closing on President's Day. In March, we have an e-learning day. It could be used for makeup day or professional development. Spring break, the last full week of March. Easter, I believe, is on March 31st. The flex day on that Monday, if needed for a makeup day, otherwise no school. And in May, Memorial Day with second semester ending on May 30th. So we're presenting this just for some discussion, want to know your thoughts. Teachers had some thoughts and threw some ideas around. One of the ideas that they threw around was starting first student day on August 16th and taking that staff organization day and putting it on Monday, January 8th. That would afford teachers the opportunity to calculate first semester grades and conduct any kind of building level meetings without students being present, and then so students would then return on Tuesday, January 9th. So we're basically stealing a day from the beginning of the year for organization and putting it at that midpoint on January 8th. We had a request to take that parent-teacher conference day in October and slide it to a Wednesday. And then there was a notion of, instead of having an e-learning day consistently on Wednesdays, to mix that up throughout the week because it's impacting special schedules at the elementary level. So those are all ideas floating out there. We're looking for any input that you might have. We'll take that input back to the discussion table on November 2nd and hopefully have a draft version that we would then present to the board at the first meeting in November.
Wouldn't swapping the conference from a Thursday to a Wednesday also impact? If they're saying e-learning, having all the e-learnings on Wednesdays?
It's not saying that nothing can happen on a Wednesday. It's just saying don't make every day on a Wednesday. So there was a specific request for that particular parent conference to be on a Wednesday and then spread your e-learnings to Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday.
I'm still on board with starting the end of August and going through June, but that will always be my stance. Starting after Labor Day and going through June.
I agree.
I know, it's so much better.
So no action needed, just wanted your feedback and input.
Anybody else? Alrighty. Good?
Okay.
Alrighty. Consent items, what do we got?
So while we're doing the consent items, I will pass out these 2 field trip proposals so that you have them before you that we added to the agenda.
Okay.
So the first round is the girls' basketball. You can take one and pass it on.
I can keep them all.
You may not.
Oh.
The second one is a trip to Spain. Take one, pass it on.
We added I thought you said varsity cheerleading we added.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
Mr. Ward is correct.
Okay. Oh, that's what you passed out.
Yeah.
You know, same difference. Okay.
I was reading the first consent item as,
I was like, wait a minute.
Do I have to do those separate?
No.
The
I can
trips
do
you
all,
can do
I can do all the
them
trips the same?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, let's go that route. Alrighty. Consent items. Number 1, approve the overnight athletic trip for the Lowell High School girls basketball team to participate in the Lebanon Girls Holiday Classic Tournament in Lebanon High School in Lebanon, Indiana from December 27th to the 28th of 22.
so that's a trip they take every year.
Alrighty. And the second overnight trip for the varsity cheerleading overnight for state prelims. October 21st, 2022 to October 22nd, 22.
Culver and Getty? Is that where it's at?
That's where the football game is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says, Culver County and Mount Vernon High School.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Well, they're leaving for the football game to go directly down
directly
here.
there.
That'd be-
Correctly.
Yeah.
Oh. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then,
Alrighty. And the trip to Spain from March 23rd to March 31st. Going to Spain.
that's over spring break of 2024. It is open to any student who had been enrolled or is enrolled in Spanish. So they would be targeting the, basically the sophomore, juniors, and seniors for next year's class.
Okay. Spanish, I was in Spanish. Alright, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So there's 3 trips. Okay. 2, accept a donation from the General Motors Corporation, Sam Pierce Chevrolet Incorporated of Danville, Indiana, in the form of a 2019 Chevy Blazer valued at $8,555.95 to support the Lowell High School vocational automotive class. Number 3, accept a donation from the John Kluver of Lowell, Indiana, in the amount of $200 to support the maintenance of his wife's memorial and student activities at Oak Hill Elementary School. Number 4, accept a donation from the Lena Mays of Lowell, Indiana, in the form of 24 framed posters depicting children from around the world to be displayed at the Lake Prairie Elementary School and Oak Hill Elementary Schools. Number 5, accept the donation from Craig and Jen Wilson of Lowell, Indiana, in the form of a rolling toolbox valued at $289.99 for the use in the Lowell High School Vocational Automotive Program. Number 6, accept a donation from the Lake Prairie Elementary School PTO in an amount of $709.50 to help support the grade 1 study trip. Number 7, accept a donation from the Three Creeks Elementary School PTO in the amount of $330.90 to help support the grade 2 study trip.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Number 1, public comment. I don't have any forms for that as well. Other information. There will be no school for students Thursday, October 20th, 2022. The teachers will participate in the Staff Development Day, the morning, and Parent-Teacher Conference in the afternoon. The next Tri Creek School Board meeting will be October 27th, 22, and fall break is scheduled for Monday, October 31st, and Tuesday, November 1st. Anything else? Good?